What's up everybody, Serenity here, and today I'm bringing you my Optic guide, so let's get into it. Alright, so let's start with the Reflex Sight. The Reflex Sight has good visibility. The only thing is that the triangle is absolutely huge, making it totally impossible to use for long range fighting. You know, if you try that, the triangle is just gonna hide your target. In the past, the bullets would go right under the tip of the triangle, but Ubisoft has changed this, and now all of the bullets go at the very top of the triangle. That way it's a bit more intuitive and easy to use. So this sight is good for fast-paced, very close range combat, because it's simply impossible to lose a triangle. Even in the middle of a fight with the ground shaking from explosions, you're just not gonna lose it. I personally use this sight on Smoke's primary weapon, and it gets the job done in close range fighting. It does lack on flexibility though, and that's why I don't recommend using it too much. The second on the list is a red dot sight. It has average visibility and the dot is very big, making it hard to use at long range. Now this sight, however, I'm not a big fan of it. You don't have good visibility and you don't have a good reticle. So it's not good for close range as you can't see very well, and it's not good for long range because the dot is way too big to be useful. The only thing that it could do alright at is medium range, where the fat dot is not in the way and the visibility on the sides is not an issue. I honestly would not recommend using this sight unless you have the choice between this and the Reflex, for example Smoke, and in that case go with your personal preference. The third on the list is the Holo Sight. Now this is a good one. So the sides are big, but the overall visibility is great due to the size of the glass you're looking through. The size of the dot in the middle is perfect, just big enough to be able to see it without hesitation and small enough to be able to hit targets at long range. The only cons being that the sides are a little bit bigger than your average sight and the bottom is very big, so you can't really see welcome mats and Capcom straps very well. I recommend the Holo Sight on pretty much every gun. It's in my opinion the most flexible and easy to use sight in the game. And finally, let's talk about the ACOG sight, the most used sight by competitive players. So the ACOG sight has magnification. Now you would think that in such a CQB intensive game the magnification would be bad, but you'd be wrong. Here's why. If you're a good player in Rainbow Six Siege, you know with very good accuracy what angles and what spots the enemy will use. It's a bit like CSGO if you've ever played that game before. You know, the community has so much map knowledge that they'll fight the same fights over and over again because they are simply the best ones to take. In those fights, the ACOG is very easy to use. All you have to do is pre-aim exactly where you predict the enemy is going to be, and when you peek you'll have a very easy time making the small adjustment needed to get the headshot. Also in this game, because of the destruction, the leaning mechanic, and the amount of cover available, most of your opponents will be holding tight angles and will have very low exposure. So obviously the ACOG sight will be of help in those situations. The ACOG will also help you to shoot outside and to defend yourself from opponents doing that to you. Using this sight will totally make the difference between getting picked off early and punishing a spawn killer. Another nice thing about the ACOG is the ability to see clearly inside and outside of a building at daytime. So because of the limited FOV of the ACOG, when you look inside a building from the outside, it won't be pitch black like it is when you're using, let's say, the Holo Sight. The same thing also applies when you're inside and you're aiming outside. The light will be a lot dimmer. A good practical example of that would be when a garage door gets blown up and the attackers are peeking the defenders from the outside. Using the ACOG, you will not only be able to see the enemy, but it's going to make it a lot easier to hit his head if he's using a lot of cover, which pretty much everybody does in that situation. Let's not talk about the cons of using the ACOG sight. So when you're ADSing, you have a very low FOV, making you tunnel visioned. However, that can be partly fixed by having a good pair of headphones and listening to your surroundings. Usually you can tell with pretty good accuracy what's going on around you just by listening to it. Another con might be that when you get flanked with the ACOG, it's pretty hard to recover, turn around and kill that flanker. But if you have a good organized team, you shouldn't get flanked too much, as your teammates should have your back and sides. Of course that's not always possible, but just know that you can shut down a large portion of enemy flanks just by having teammates that communicate well. So in general, the ACOG will make you a lot stronger on one angle instead of average on multiple angles at once. So if you have a team with ACOGs all looking in different directions, assuming that you have good communication, then the tunnel vision nature of this optic becomes a good thing. You'll just trade a lot more efficiently on all fronts. And this is why I didn't recommend the ACOG in my first videos. I just didn't have the map knowledge and coordination with my team to make it work. But now that I do, there's no way I'm going back. So in the end, what do I recommend? Well, like I said, if you don't know exactly what's behind each wall in every map, and your team is not calling out what angles they're covering, the Holo is a great choice. But if you're a more experienced player playing with other good players, I recommend the ACOG sight. Just know that it will take some time to adapt from the Holo to the ACOG, so give it a chance. Let's talk about the Russian optics. First, you have the red dot sight. Now this one has great vision and the crosshair is not the best, but it's not the worst either. I used it quite a lot on Capcan's SMG and I gotta say I liked it. Although I wouldn't really recommend it because I still think that the Reflex Sight is better. The second optic is the Holo Sight and it's bad. You have bad visibility and the crosshair is just way too complicated to be useful in this game. So of course I wouldn't recommend it. The third optic is the Reflex Sight and that one is awesome. It has exceptional visibility. The crosshair is a little bit complicated, but honestly the size of the actual optic makes up for it big time. I'm a big fan of it and I would totally recommend this one to anyone not using the ACOG sight. And finally you have the ACOG sight, which looks a bit weird but it works exactly like the Western one. I do like the fact that it's a dot instead of an arrow, so it's a lot easier to see like under the target. And like I said earlier, using the ACOG sight will make you a lot more efficient if you have a team watching your back. Oh, and by the way, the bullets used to hit way lower than the dot in the middle, but that's fixed now, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. That's it. That's all the optics. So in conclusion, use the Holo and the Russian Reflex Sight if you're playing by yourself or you just don't know the maps very well. And if you do, try out the ACOGs. They'll make you play a lot better in the fights that seem to happen over and over again. Just make sure that your teammates are calling out what angles they're covering and you're good to go. One last note before I end the video. Just take this video with a grain of salt. I understand that optics are mostly preference, and if you feel like you're playing better with, let's say, the red dot than the Holo, then that's fine, just stick with it. A good example of that would be that I prefer the Russian red dot over the Reflex. I don't know why, but I seem to do way better with it. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching, thanks for the support, and I'll see you soon. Imagine there's a ghost right behind you that follows you everywhere you go. It's separated from you ever so slightly. That ghost is where other players see you. So if you peek an enemy, you'll see him well before he sees your quote-unquote ghost. So if you know the map layout very well and you know exactly where an enemy is, you can peek and kill him before spending 250 millisecond peeking on his screen, which by the way is the average reaction time. This is a very good example on how the shotgun can save your life. Just look at the speed at which I'll switch to it.